So we are starting a new book today. This is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Go ahead, go ahead.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. One was highly educated and intelligent. He had a PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. He then went on to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his advanced studies, all on full financial scholarships. The other father never finished the eighth grade. Both men were successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial incomes, yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men in Hawaii. One died, leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The other left bills to be paid. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in education, but did not recommend the same course of study.
So,
If I had
so basically, what are we looking at, right? This person had a real contrast in his life. One person was looking at it from one perspective, and the other dad was looking at it from another perspective. And he had the choice to make as to which perspective to take into his life.
if I had had only one dad, I would have had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. Instead of simply accepting or rejecting one or the other, I found myself thinking more, comparing, and then choosing for myself. The problem was that the rich man was not rich yet, and the poor man was not yet poor. Both were just starting out on their careers, and both were struggling with money and families, but they had very different points of view about money. For example, one dad would say, the love of money is the root of all evil. The other said, the lack of money is the root of all evil. As a young boy, having two strong fathers both influencing me was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, but the two fathers did not say the same things. The contrast in their points of view, particularly about money, was so extreme that I grew curious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long periods of time about what each was saying.
So, what was happening? He was getting the contrasting views, but he was introspecting. He was just not offhandedly taking any of the views or rejecting them. He was doing manan. That's what what we are hearing in the Gita talks and the Vedanta talks also. That when you're operating out of gyan, right? Gyan means you have to introspect. You have to do manan. about what is happening. So this guy is actually doing manan. He is introspecting on the views that he is getting, and then he is going to make an informed choice. So as we constantly keep saying, right, that there are two aspects to everything. The first is the knowledge, the second is the experience, or the first is the experience, the second is the knowledge. Until we have both of them, it doesn't become wisdom. So both the dads are giving him knowledge, but now he has to use it and experience it for it to become wisdom for him.
Much of my private time was spent reflecting, asking myself questions such as, why does he say that? And then asking the same question of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, yeah, he's right, I agree with that. Or to simply reject the point of view by saying, the old man doesn't know what he's talking about. Instead, having two dads whom I loved forced me to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned out to be much more valuable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single point of view.
So again, now this is really beautiful, right? It's very easy to say I agree or disagree. But what he was doing, he was actually introspecting. He was actually thrashing out both the point of views in his head and then making an informed choice, seeing both the contradictory statements that were being made by both his dads. Now, of course, over here when he says I had two dads, one of those dads was I think a friend's dad, and one was his own dad.
One of the reasons the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home, not in school. Most of us learn about money from our parents. So, what can poor parents tell their child about money? They simply say, stay in school and study hard. The child may graduate with excellent grades, but with a poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. Schools focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains how smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earned excellent grades may struggle financially all of their lives. Our staggering national debt is due in large part to highly educated politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little or no training in the subject of money.
So what does he say over here, right? One of the reasons that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer is that the subject of money is taught in the house and not in the school. What does this imply? This implies that your environment, the environment that you are born in, the environment that you are living in, the environment that you associate with is going to rub off on you. So this is akin to something called epigenetics. Now, they have seen that if two twins are born, the genetic makeup is the same. But if the environment in which they are brought up is different, they will have different lives. The reason is that everything is not dependent on genetics. It is dependent on your environment. So what is the environment you are in? How do you relate with money? So the way that a poor person will relate to money and the way that a rich person will relate to money is very, very different. Okay. And naturally, it is not taught in schools. You have to learn it on your own. Yes, Kavita Didi?
Yeah, so Niket, I would also think ad here is the frequency again what they are resonating at. So that's what they are going to attract, right?
Correct.
Because right
Naturally.
from, yeah.
So today, if your environment is a particular way, right, you're resonating with that frequency. Your relationship with money, your relationship with material things is resonating at that level. Okay. So naturally, that is what you're going to attract. So epigenetics is totally based on resonance at the end of the day. It's basically a chicken and egg story. It goes round and round all the time.
Today, I often wonder what will soon happen when we have millions of people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? How will a nation survive if teaching children about money continues to be left to parents, most of whom will be or already are poor?
So when you really see what happens, and especially in the Western countries and especially America, most of the kids are starting their life out with debt. Okay. The parents are also in debt. A lot of the parents are also in debt. I know for a fact that the American people, most of them, they live week by week. Salaries in America are paid weekly. Are you all getting what I'm saying? Salaries are paid weekly because people don't have money, and they don't save money also. So the spending culture also is a problem, in the sense that if you don't structure your money properly and you don't plan how you're going to spend it, you land up always spending more than what you want. So this is again something that I think we read it in Magical Child only, the concept of delay of gratification. That is not there, then that becomes a problem. Okay. And naturally, if everyone is dependent on the government, and there is a syndrome over there that the social security funds which are there actually does not have enough to cover everyone. So again, that becomes a big balloon which is waiting to burst.
Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained valuable insight into the power and effect of one's thoughts on one's life. For example, one dad had a habit of saying, I can't afford it. The other dad forbade those words to be used. He insisted, I asked, how can I afford it? One is a statement and the other is a question.
Okay, so now over here, okay, so now if you say I can't afford it, you're on the left side of the grid. And when you say, how can I afford it? You're on the right side of the grid because you're empowering yourself. So again, at the end of the day, it comes down to what are you thinking? How are you thinking about something? And which is what we have been constantly talking about for the last year, that watch your thoughts. Where are you thinking from? What is your thought thinking pattern? Because your thought is going to result in an action. So this becomes very important, right? So two contradictory statements coming from two of his fathers. Now, which one is he going to choose? That is a question that he needs to answer for himself.
One is a statement and the other is a question. One lets you off the hook and the other forces you to think. One soon to be rich dad would explain that automatically saying the words, I can't afford it, your brain stops working. By asking the question, how can I afford it? Your brain is put to work. He did not mean that you should buy everything you want. He was fanatical about exercising your mind, the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say, my brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I can make. He believed that automatically saying, I can't afford it, was a sign of mental laziness.
So again, very powerful, right? Whatever you focus your attention on, whatever you work on, whatever you practice, that is what is going to come into your life. So as Kavita Didi was saying, that what is the frequency that you're vibrating at, that is what you're going to attract in your life. Now, if I treat everything as an opportunity and I'm looking for the answer, the universe will open up to give me the answer. But when I say that, okay, now I'm settled, I can't do anything about it, then what happens? The universe says, okay, this guy doesn't want to do anything about it. Let him be, right? The universal consciousness is infinitely compassionate. It is going to give you and get into your life whatever you want. So we have to be very careful by what are we wanting, what are we thinking, what are we doing.
Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that one dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, and the other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long term result was that one dad grew stronger financially and the other grew weaker. It is not much different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on a regular basis versus someone who sits on the couch watching television. Proper physical exercise increases your chances for health, and proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth. My two dads had opposing attitudes, and that affected the way they thought. One dad thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of the less fortunate. The other said, take taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce.
Okay. Now, oops. Okay. So now, what is he saying over here? Whatever you exercise will start working for you. Now, if you want financial success, it is important to work on your finances. It's very important to know about your finances. Most people have no clue about their finances. How is it coming? How is it going? What to do about it? Most people do not have a clue. And especially, we do not educate our children about it because we do not inform children. They get everything that they want, right? So any child who's throwing a tantrum really doesn't understand what is happening because the parents have not made the child aware to keep the child insulated. But then when the child grows up, this insulation itself starts to create a problem. And this is one of the reasons why, I don't know, I was intuitively guided to pick this book up, because we are talking about spirituality. But if your finances are not correct, spirituality will not work. If you do not have resources, how are you going to live? If you can't live properly, your mind will be totally focused on generating the funds, not on actually growth of your intellectual ability to go into transcendental spaces. So this becomes extremely important. And this statement over here, taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce. So anytime we are making a dole, we are making that person lazy. Okay. So tamas, when we are looking at it from the Vedantic principle, when you are not doing your obligatory duty, you are tamasic in nature. So if you see anyone who's really taking a dole is tamasic in nature. They are not doing what they need to do. So the statement that is made in the Vedanta talks is dunya kare kaam or main karu aram. Okay. That's the thing over here. So every time you're not doing your obligatory duty, you're becoming lazy. So if you want to achieve something, you have to be active. And this results from your thoughts. So what are you thinking? How are you thinking? And this book is going to make us think as to how are we thinking about finances.
One dad recommended study hard so you can find a good company to work for. The other recommended study hard so you can find a good company to buy. One dad said, the reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids. The other said, the reason I must be rich is because I have you kids. One encouraged talking about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal.
So Now, again, this is the mahal, right? What is the environment that you're growing up in? That is what is going to get inculcated in your life. Okay. So we need to be very clear, and especially when we are looking at our children, is that what is the environment that we are providing to our children? It becomes so important. What are we discussing? Are we on the dining table? Are we gossiping? Are we talking about depleting stuff that really doesn't matter to us? Are we talking about something uplifting? Are we talking about something which is depleting? So, what is the dining table conversation? We need to think about it. The other fact is that there is a saying that the family which eats together and prays together stays together. Nowadays, what is happening? Everyone has their own television, and in most houses, people are eating their meals in front of the television. Even I do it many times. I have to confess. But the fact of the matter is that if the family can eat together, right, it is one of the best things and the best training that you can give to the children. I would say even toddlers should be made to eat with the rest of the family on the same table. The reason is they get used to it, and they are hearing, the toddlers are also hearing the conversation, right? So we need to have uplifting conversation in the dining table, which is very clearly said over here that one father forbade the talk of finances, the other one wanted to talk. Why? The first father, who was the poor dad, was always stressed about finance, and the rich dad was always excited about finance, right? Now, that's the two contradictory states of mind, the states of being of the two dads. So, one was operating more from the left side of the grid, the other guy was operating more from the right side of the grid.
One said, when it comes to money, play it safe, don't take risks. The other said, learning to manage risk. Learn to manage risk. One believed, our home is our largest investment and our greatest asset. The other believed, my house is a liability, and if your house is your largest investment, you are in trouble.
So, what does this mean, right? One is saying that do not take risks, the other is saying manage your risks. Now, the guy who's going to do better is always the guy who's managing the risk, and the one who's not taking the risk will never earn more. Okay, now this statement over here is very beautiful. If your house is your biggest investment, then you are in trouble. What does this imply? When you are living in a house, it is not an income generating resource. It is a liability because it is going to take your money. You have to pay maintenance. You have to pay for electricity. You have to pay for painting. You have to pay for repair and maintenance. You have to pay the corporation tax. You have to pay the building society for the maintenance, for security, etc., 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 etc. Right? So if your house is your biggest investment, it is actually a liability because it is eating your resources. It is not generating your resources. So this is what he's meaning, that if your house is your largest investment, you're in trouble.
Both dads paid their bills on time, yet one paid his bills first while the other paid his bills last. One dad believed in a company or the government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about paying raises, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed with two of his uncles who joined the military and earned a retirement and entitlement package for life after 20 years of active service. He loved the idea of medical benefits and PX privileges the military provided its retirees. He also loved the tenure system available through university. The idea of job protection for life and job benefits seemed more important at times than his job. He would often say, I've worked hard for the government and I'm entitled to these benefits. The
So,
other,
so again, one dad paid his bills first and the other paid his bills last, right? So now it's again the thinking process. How are you thinking? You want to pay it last. Why? Because you want to get interest on your money or whatever. Plus, the other guy, he wants to get rid of this stuff that he needs to do so that he can focus on something better. He can focus on something new. So again, contradictory thinking. Now over here, this dad, the poor dad, wants the government to look after him. The guy wants security. He wants to be sure that things are okay for him whenever he retires, right? He's not concerned about innovation. He's not concerned about any kind of risk taking. He is always the safe player, right? And then he says it is moving from he feels he's entitled to something. Now if you really see, most of the people who are getting doles, they feel they are entitled to it, but in actual fact they are not entitled to it, right? But most of them feel entitled. So he says very clearly, I have worked hard for the government and I'm entitled to these benefits.
the other believed in total financial self reliance. He spoke out against the entitlement mentality and how it created weak and financially needy people. He was emphatic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars, the other created investments. One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume so I could find a good job. The other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so I could create jobs.
So again, two, two conflicting, two totally diverse views, right? Now, this guy is in a very beautiful position because he gets to make a choice as to which way he is going to go. And he can create a third scenario which merges both the opinions, right? So the rich dad was speaking out against the mentality of entitlement. And it is a fact that when a person feels entitled and is getting something free, the guy is not going to work. So if you're going to take from the rich and give to the poor, ultimately everyone will become poor because the poor is going to stop working. And the rich guy who's actually working will say, Arey, it's being taken away from me. Why should I work? There's no point in working. So then when no one works, then even the poor guy loses, right? So very clearly, one is looking at getting a job and the other is looking at creating jobs. So very big mentality difference.
Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts.
So
For example,
again, so very clear, right? We shape our lives with our thoughts. So that's why again it becomes very, very important to watch our thoughts. What are we thinking? What is the state of consciousness that we are operating from? Which side of the grid are we operating from? What is the level of consciousness from which we are operating from?
my poor dad always said, I'll never be rich. And that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. He would say things like, I'm a rich man and rich people don't do this. Even when he was flat broke after a major financial setback, he continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by saying, there is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal.
So again, thinking process. What are we thinking? How are we thinking? What is the mindset with which we are operating, right? Becomes extremely important. Yes, Kavita Didi.
So Niket, I may not make sense, but this is some question which came to my mind. So the universe does not understand negative words, right?
Correct.
And the quotes that said, I will never be rich. So if we take the word never out, it will actually be, I will be rich. Of course, he was not working towards being rich. I understand that. But just something like this came up into my head.
That may be, but he is affirming that he will never be rich. There is a there is a nuancing difference. When you say I do not want this,
Okay.
then you're saying I want it.
Okay.
Never is not a not.
Never
Never
is still a negative word, right?
a negative word, but that's what you're bringing into your life, right?
Uh-huh.
When we are going into an altered state and we say that I don't want this,
Yeah.
then we are going into a creative mechanism over here. This is
Yeah,
his
that
being. He is actually saying, affirming it over here. Over there, you are asking for it. There is a
okay.
there is a
Yes, there is
production
a
over there.
difference. Yeah, right.
Over here,
Okay.
it is you are affirming it.
Mhm.
One thing now I've started to notice, and I'm paying attention myself, is that when people say it is my thyroid, it is my cancer, that means you're owning it, right? You're saying it is mine. The other
Yeah,
way
very right.
is that I am experiencing cancer or my body has cancer. So you don't have cancer, the body has cancer. So you're making
That's wonderful. Yeah.
you're making a distinction over there, right?
Okay, thank you.
And one more thing I wanted to say, Bhaiya, is never is always not a negative word.
Yeah. The point is over
Because
here.
I never fall sick, ऐसे बोलते तो it's a positive thing. Never fall sick.
Yeah. So it is not a not. That is the basic.
Yeah.
And Bhaiya, one thing also I want to add is never is it is making it permanent. When I'm saying never, I'm making it permanent for myself. It is
Yes,
in
but
time.
1 second. But see, you have to look at it in context. Okay. When he
Yes, Bhaiya.
says
Yes.
over here, when he says, I will never be rich, that means
Haan.
he is creating a mindset for himself that he is not going to attract opportunities that will allow him to become rich also.
Yes, ever.
Telling the universe that he's affirming it. He's
Yes,
making an
yes.
affirmation over here. He's not
Yeah.
desiring or working for something. So we have to also look at things from a context that it is being said. When what Kavita Didi was meaning, when we are going into these altered states, and over there we are going into creating a pattern for ourselves, over there not does not work. But over here, this is operating at C1 consciousness, although it's the same, but it's more gross over here. Here he is making an affirmation. So there's a very big difference in that.
Okay, Bhaiya. Thank you.
Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts. For example, For example, my poor dad always said, I'll never be rich, and that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. He would say things like, I'm a rich man, the rich people don't do this. And when he was flat broke after a major financial setback, he continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by saying there is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal. My poor dad would say, I'm not interested in money, or money doesn't matter. My rich dad always said, money is power.
So now this is also very, very important. Okay. And I have been guilty of this. The same thing I have personally been guilty of, where I have used to previously say money does not matter, what we are doing matters more, right? And then I realized what I'm doing for myself. So now I've started saying money matters a lot and money is important, but I would like to do this. So I am looking at getting the money also, but also doing what I am doing. Now over here, as soon as you say money doesn't matter, that means you're telling the universe that money really does not matter. So I will do what I have to do. If I get money, okay. If I don't, it is okay. But financial security and finances are extremely important for us. If we do not have the finances and the basic comforts of life, it becomes difficult to get into spirituality. This is again and again, I'm repeating it, and it is extremely important. Yes, Raghuji?
There are two things that I think it's not bad to have a lot of money, but to be addicted with money is a problem. That addiction creates greed and everything, need and greed and everything. When you're able to deal with money as an energy which you give and take, it becomes a different proposition altogether. You're flowing with the energy. You're flowing with the money. You're open for everything. So having a lot of money is not a problem, but money is the only thing which matters. Becoming addicted to it becomes you get stuck.
Yeah, so being addicted to anything, being addicted or
Right.
attached to anything in life is really a problem. And money is included in that game. Because again, when you look at it from the Vedantic principles, very clear, it is in the Gita, it's very clearly said that anything that you are attached to or anything that you forcefully get into your life will lead to dukh. It will lead to creating problems for yourself. So anything that you're attached to, be careful. You have to observe. And what is your relationship with it? You have to have a beautiful relationship. Which side of the grid are you relating to money from becomes very important. And then Raghuji has brought up a very, very important point here.
The power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that it was important to be aware of my thoughts and how I expressed myself. I noticed that my poor dad was poor not because of the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts and actions. As a young boy, having two fathers, I became acutely aware of being careful about which thoughts I chose to adopt as my own. Should I listen to my rich dad or to my poor dad?
Okay.
There is a difference between.
So now over here, he says very clearly that his poor dad earned a lot of money, but his relationship with money and the way what he thought about money, his thoughts about money did not allow him to retain the money. So he remained a poor dad in spite of earning a lot. So it's not only about earning, it is also about keeping. So many times people forget that it is important to earn money, but it is even more important to how do you keep the money. That is what becomes important. So what is your relationship with money? How do you relate with money becomes important over here. And the last line he says very clearly, I became acutely aware of being careful which thoughts I chose to adopt as my own. So he started observing his thoughts, right? Whom should I listen to? My rich dad or my poor dad? Okay, so that becomes very, very important.
There is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal.
Shivangla, you have two paragraphs down.
No, this is again, it's come in the middle.
Acha, okay.
Although both men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed about what they thought was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree, and get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study to become a professional, an attorney or an accountant, and to go to business school for my MBA. The other encouraged me to study to be rich, to understand how money works, and to learn how to how to have it work for me. I don't work for money, were words he would repeat over and over. Money works for me. At the age of 9, I decided to listen to and learn from my rich dad about money. In doing so, I chose not to listen to my poor dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees.
So again, very beautiful, right? I don't work for money. Money works for me. So what was happening? He was not working at earning. He was working at making the money work for him so that he did not have to work. And at the age of 9, this young boy has taken a decision that as far as money matters are concerned, I am not going to listen to my dad who is highly educated and knows a lot, but I will listen to my rich dad who knows how to make money work for him and he doesn't work for money.
A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems, my favorite is The Road Not Taken. I use its lesson almost daily. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as far for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
So what he's talking about here is how do we make the choice? How do we choose? Because in life, whenever we are traveling, we'll always come to a choice point. We'll come to a point where we can go this way or we can go that way. So which is the choice that I'm going to make? How am I going to make that choice? Okay, now this becomes important. Am I going to listen to the small guy? Am I going to listen to the big guy? What is the feel that I get? So when we are looking at it again from zero limits, are we going to operate from memory or are we going to operate from inspiration? So where are we operating from? How do we make our choices? That becomes very, very important.
There is a question on the chat.
Okay, please raise your hand and ask. And this is going to come around. It's not going to be answered right now.
And that has made all the difference. Over the years, I have often reflected upon Robert Frost's poem. Choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad's advice and attitude about money was a painful decision, but it was a decision that shaped the rest of my life.
So what did the 9-year-old do, right? Although he was now very clearly, he said it here, he was not listening to his own father, who was highly educated, because in his own introspection, he found that the advice being given by his rich dad was better and more efficient and effective than the advice being given by his poor dad, who was more highly educated.
Once I made up my mind about whom to listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 years until I was 39 years old. He stopped once he realized that I knew and fully understood what he had been trying to drum into my often thick skull.
Shimala, slow down.
Money is one form of power, but what is more powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money works, you gain power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works. So they spend their lives working for money.
Now, this is very, very important, right? He says, what is more powerful is financial education and education about how money works. Now, it is like this, right? Now, if there is a computer programmer, you have the front end of the computer program and you have the back end of the computer program. Now, if you only know the front end, then there is very little that you can do to change the program. Okay. But if you know the back end and you know how to make changes in the back end of the program, you can make the changes in the front end, right? Now, which is more powerful, knowing how to use the front end or knowing how to make the changes in the back end? So this is exactly what he's saying over here. If you know how money works and you make money into wealth rather than an income, so there's a shift from earning money to keeping money. When you're earning money, it's an income. When you're creating an asset, when you're making money become wealth, okay, that is actually creation of something, and then you can make the money work for you. So there's a very big distinction between income and wealth. So his poor dad was having a big income, but he was not converting the income into wealth. Whereas the rich dad may have had a lesser income in the beginning, but he was converting it into wealth. So there's a difference in the way that they were operating.
Because I was only 9 years old when I started, the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple, and when it was all said and done, there were only six main lessons repeated over 30 years. This book is about those six lessons put as simply as possible, just as simply as my rich dad put forth those lessons to me. The lessons are meant not to be answers, but guideposts that will assist you and your children to grow wealthier no matter what happens in a world of increasing change and uncertainty.
So it's like setting the goals post, right? It's setting a guideline, but you have to maneuver within the guidelines. You cannot get stuck with something also. So now we are going to go into the 6 lessons.
Chapter 1, Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today Jimmy's mom drove up in their new Cadillac and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did. I replied in a hurt tone. My dad silently shook his head, pushed his glasses up on the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar plantation town. The managers of the plantation and other affluent people, such as doctors, business owners, and bankers, sent their children to this elementary school. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school with kids from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go on to the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or for me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly. If you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling. Even then, I knew that real. Even then, I knew that really meant that's all I'm going to tell you. Or I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me.
So again, now this is the poor dad talking, because the poor dad actually did not know what he was, how to make money.
A partnership is formed. The next morning, I told my best friend Mike what my dad had said. As best I could tell, Mike and I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was also in the school by a twist of fate. Someone had drawn a jog in the line for the school district, and we wound up in school with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and dad provided us with the basics like food, shelter, and clothes. But that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things, but there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys. So, what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I said, but do you want to be my partner? He agreed, and so on that Saturday morning, Mike became my first business partner. We spent all morning coming up with ideas on how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about all the cool guys at Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but that hurt was good because it inspired us to keep thinking of a way to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning struck. It was an idea Mike got from a science book he had read. Excitedly, we shook hands, and the partnership now had a business. For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around our neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking our neighbors if they would save their toothpaste tubes for us. With puzzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some asked us what we were doing, to which we replied, we can't tell you, it's a business secret. My mom grew distressed as the weeks wore on. We had selected a site next to her washing machine as the place we would stockpile our raw materials. In a brown cardboard box that one time had catsup bottle bottles, a little pile of used toothpaste tubes began to grow. Finally, my mom put her foot down. The sight of her neighbor's messy, crumpled, used toothpaste tubes had gotten to her. What are you boys doing? She asked. And I don't want to hear again that it's a business secret. Do something with this mess or I'm going to throw it out. Mike and I pleaded and begged, explaining that we would soon have enough and then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to finish their toothpaste so we could have their tubes. Mom granted us a 1 week extension. The date to begin production was moved up and the pressure was on. My first partnership was already being threatened with an eviction notice by my own mom. It became Mike's job to tell the neighbors to quickly use up their toothpaste, saying their dentist wanted them to brush more often anyway. I began to put together the production line. One day, my dad drove up with a friend to see two 9-year-old boys in the driveway with a production line operating at full speed. There was fine white powder everywhere. On a long table were small milk cartons from school, and our family's hibachi grill was glowing with red hot coals at maximum heat. Dad walked up cautiously, having to park the car at the base of the driveway since the production line blocked the carport. And he and his friend got closer. They saw a steel pot sitting on the top of the coals in which the toothpaste tubes were being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in plastic tubes. The tubes were made of lead. So once the paint was burned off, the tubes were dropped in the small steel pot. They melted until they became liquid. With my mom's pot holders, we poured the lead through a small hole in the top of the milk cartons. The milk cartons were filled with plaster of Paris. White powder was everywhere. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over, and the entire area looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk cartons were the outer containers for plaster of Paris molds. My dad and his friend watched as we carefully poured the molten lead through a small hole in the top of the plaster of Paris cube. Careful, my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the steel pot down and smiled at my dad. What are you boys doing? He asked with a cautious smile. We are doing what you told me to do. We are going to be rich, I said. Yup, said Mike, grinning and nodding his head. We are partners. And what is in those plaster molds? My dad asked. Watch, I said. This should be a good batch. With a small hammer, I tapped at the seal that divided the cube in half. Cautiously, I pulled up the top half of the plaster mold and a lead nickel fell out. Oh no, my dad exclaimed. You're casting nickels out of lead? That's right, Mike said. We are doing as you told us to. We are making money. My dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head. Although with a fire and a box of spent toothpaste tubes, in front of them were two little boys covered with white dust, smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and sit with him on the front step of our house. With a smile, he gently explained what the word counterfeiting meant. Our dreams were dashed. You mean this is illegal? Asked Mike in a quivering voice. Let them go, my dad's friend said. They might be developing a natural talent. My dad glared at him. Yes, it is illegal, my dad said gently, but you boys have shown great creativity and original thought. Keep going, I'm really proud of you. Disappointed, Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up our mess. The business was over on opening day. Sweeping the powder up, I looked at Mike and said, I guess Jimmy and his friends are right. We are poor.
Just carry on.
My father was just leaving as I said that. Boys, he said, you're only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something. Most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. I'm very proud of the two of you. I will say it again. Keep going. Don't quit.
So again, taking an initiative, doing something about it. Now, if one idea didn't work, you go into the next idea. You get another idea and you start working on it. We'll just,
Mike and,
it's just 2 pages. We'll just finish it off.
Mike and I stood there in silence. They were nice words, but we still did not know what to do. So how come you're not rich, Dad? I asked. Because I chose to be a school teacher. School teachers really don't think about being rich. We just like to teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money. Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. I know, said my dad, if you boys want to learn how to be rich, don't ask me. Talk to your dad, Mike. My dad, asked Mike with a scrunched up face. Yeah, your dad, repeated my dad with a smile. Your dad and I have the same banker, and he raves about your father. He's told me several times that your father is brilliant when it comes to making money. My dad, Mike asked again in disbelief. Then how come we don't have a nice car and a nice house like the rich kids at school? A nice car and a nice house don't necessarily mean you're richer or you know how to make money, my dad replied. Jimmy's dad works for the sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar company is financial trouble, and Jimmy's dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire, and I suspect in a few years he will be a very rich man.
So he says something very nice over here. A nice car and a nice house don't necessarily mean that you are rich and you're making money. Because it could be a company car, it could be that you have borrowed and bought the car. So actually, you are not rich.
With that, Mike and I got excited again. With new vigor, we began cleaning up the mess caused by a now defunct first business. As we were cleaning, we made plans for how and when to talk to Mike's dad. The problem was that Mike's dad worked long hours and often did not come home until late. His father owned warehouses, a construction company, a chain of stores, and 3 restaurants. It was the restaurants that kept him out late.
So now, Mike's dad owns warehouses, a construction company, a chain of stores, as well as restaurants, but he still doesn't have a big car and a big house. Okay. So what is happening? In Mike's dad's view, which is the rich dad over here, the reference to rich dad, he is not willing to invest on anything or own anything that is not an income generator. He wants income generators. He doesn't want a liability. He wants a asset.
Mike caught the bus home after we had finished cleaning up. He was going to talk to his dad when he got home that night and ask him if he would teach us how to become rich. Mike promised a call as soon as he had talked to his dad, even if it were late. The phone rang at 8:30 p.m. Okay, I said, next Saturday. I put the phone down. Mike's dad had agreed to meet with us. On Saturday, I caught the 7:30 a.m. bus to the poor side of town.
Great. I think we can stop here.